The web world is changing dramatically at the moment, and that's in part due to a new concept called vibe coding. Vibe coding, if you haven't heard anything about it, is basically leveraging AI to write at least 80% of your code. And this in turn has had a knock-on effect of what you and me and everyone in this web world want to build, because before, web apps were restricted to the hands of hardcore developers, people using no-code platforms like Bubble or a plugin called Windsurf for Webflow. But vibe coding allows us now to build applications, SaaS applications, without understanding any code. There's a lot of caveats to that, of course, and I'm going to go through four in fact, SaaS applications that I've built in an attempt to really understand vibe coding and tell you exactly what it takes to build the best vibe coded app. What I'm going to try and do is pepper in sort of tips and tricks along the way that I think will benefit you in this journey of vibe coding. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat to these applications. 3 of them were applications that I've previously built, but revitalized with the power of vibe coding. Journey for Clarity was my first experiment. I did this over on my other channel using a tool called Replit. And without ruining the surprise, that is by far and away one of my favorite applications and one of my recommended applications for you guys. This was an application that you log in and it gives you daily reminders to reflect, and you can reflect here. By the way, I really like my little thing here. Your whole command, it kind of suggests that is a way to enter your entry, because sometimes it's a bit unclear. I can submit my entry, and then at the end of the month is actually going to pull all together all of your journal entries and use AI to establish themes and trends and things like that. I also added through vibe coding this kind of going back through your months, and I've also added through vibe coding subscription. Before, it was a kind of one-time payment with a limited version of this tool just to kind of get it up and running. Now there's a subscription to it. Like I say, I built this in Replit. And what I like about many of these tools, and Replit in particular, is that I could sync my GitHub library that I'd already built, the Next.js app, into here and then vibe code my way through some of the features that I had literally been dreaming of for absolutely ages. And it took me a little bit of time to get there, and we can get into that a little bit later on in this video. But ultimately, this was the tool. And I think it would be wise to go through probably the pipeline of deployment, because the reason why I recommend it to you is because it's this all-in-one platform. It takes care of your database, it takes care of your hosting. I think it even takes care of authentication. Let's just double check. Even takes care of authentication, which is great if you just, again, it's like Webflow in that it's this all-in-one package that takes care of everything. But one, I already had a deployment system set up. 2, it's more costly and I didn't want to keep paying for Replit, although it does provide a lot out of the box. And 3, I already had systems in place. I was already using Firebase to store authentication and the journal entries and things like that. So what I did is that, yes, Git, because I imported this through Git, I can sync it back and forward, and then Vercel is set up to automatically deploy to production. And this is kind of commonplace through all of my apps, and we'll get into some of the default system prompts that I give other tools. Make sure I'm always using Vercel, making sure I'm always using the tools that I'm most familiar with. The next app that I built was Visa Tracker. Now, this was just a fun little app where I was in and out of Europe a lot, and Europe has this Schengen visa, which is basically you get 90 days out of 180 days. And because I was in and out of Europe, I need to be calculating the days that I actually spent in Europe to make sure it never went over that 90 days. So I built this visa tracker to say, if I choose this visa, I enter Europe. Let's say I go to Europe on Saturday, but then I've got a trip planned to outside of Europe to, say, Morocco, and then I go to Morocco on there for like a week. That's fine. Add that trip. You can see this adds up. Then and it tells me when I need to leave Europe based on this short little trip to Morocco, because that then exceeds my 180 days, and I can add multiple trips here. Really fun, really genuinely useful app, completely free, this one. And I just thought it was a fun way to, again, revitalize an old app that doesn't cost anything to run, again, because it's on Vercel. I might want to move this one onto Supabase, as I do with all my apps, because I'm starting to just want to streamline as much as possible. So this one's, again, using Firebase, but I find Firebase quite complicated and just a bit janky, to be honest, but it does the job, and you can sign up and you can use this. This is visatracker.vercel. But I was able to really iron out some of these dates, overlapping dates, because that was just a mind fuck thinking about, well, if someone lands at this time or they say they exit the country at this date, don't allow them to choose a date that exceeds this one and vice versa, and this date was getting calculated wrong. It was just the math side of things, which I'm awful at, that I was able to fix with the vibe coding methodology, I guess you'd call it. And you might have heard me talk about this one before. This is ToobSquid. Now, this was a paid for, my first AI application, which essentially, when you upload it's for people like me who upload videos to YouTube. If you upload your video to YouTube and set it as unlisted, what you can do, you can point ToobSquid to that unlisted URL, and it will use the actual transcript, and that's a very specific thing, the actual transcript, to generate a title and description from your video. It doesn't need you to prompt what you think the video is about or what you think the highlights are of the video or whatever. It just uses the raw transcript. And again, it was just revitalizing this application, but ultimately, yeah, another SaaS application. One that I really wanted to learn, really wanted to put cursor against Windsurf, was a micro SaaS application that I'm building for my company. If you work for Jupiter and the Giraffe, my company, if we do some work for you, we build your website or whatever, and it's using all of these services, like your database is stored here, or your hosting is there, and all your analytics are here, then I want to just give you one place where you log in and you can just get the information. It's very, like, this is version 0.1, where it's just a username and password storage, where you can click through to the website that does whatever it is, and you can copy and paste the password, sort of thing. And I can, as a master user here, I can add new users, I can add services and assign those services to specific organizations. So any users that are assigned to an organization then see those services, and then if they're an admin of that organization, they can add their own services. Hope that makes sense. But again, this was 100% vibe code. And you can see the UI looks pretty straightforward. I'm quite pleased with the UI, but this did actually look a lot better. And this is one of the things that I found using Windsurf. It's because I did the majority of this in Cursor. I brought it over to Windsurf, and this is, I think, a fact of vibe coding, is that it will just change a bunch of files and things like that you don't ask it to do. Okay, I think this is worth going widescreen here. So I think this is a big caveat with vibe-coded applications, because as they get more complex, they start to get bigger and bigger, and you're going to have to narrow in and understand the code a lot better of all the different files and what they do, and vibe code on specific files that you know. If you want to add something to the header, you don't just say, I want to add a link to the header. You reference that file, which you can do in the Cursor agent or in Replit or anything like that, and then ask it specifically on that file to do the thing. Because I was finding that if I was too broad on a complex code base, it would just make so many changes that I didn't want to do. And I think that's a major issue with vibe coding. Let's just quickly go over some of these tools, okay? So this is Lovable, and essentially you've got your prompt screen here. You can attach images to reference, you can make edits. And really, to me, Lovable is the simplest one, in my opinion. It's reliant very heavily on the AI itself. So they really need to get the AI spot on for it to really do a good job. And I don't think they're quite there yet, but it's a really, really nice, clean, good looking way to begin this kind of vibe coding journey. I think, let's have a look. I think so you can't edit code even, and that's something I often would do if I know the change I'm going to make. I know this is coming in beta, but right now you can't. You have to sync this to GitHub and then put it down and make those changes. There's things I like about that separation, that it doesn't, that you can't edit code very easily. You can imagine people who just want to rely on vibe coding and then they're not accidentally editing files. It really wants to use Supabase as well, which is quite nice. I like that. Interestingly, the app that I built, I asked it to build an application and it didn't use Firebase by default, which is kind of strange. You'd think at every opportunity it would use Supabase or get you to set that up. No idea, but again, that's what you get when you're heavily dependent on the AI being the only form of input with Lovable. It has hosting as well, which is really important. So you can just host this on their servers with this publish button, but it's a very stripped back, very simple. Let's compare this as the framer of the website world. Really simple, clean looking and fun application. Then we have Replit, which, as you can see, it starts to get more technical. This is probably the Webflow or the Pinegrow of building SaaS applications through like prompts and things like that. You've got the assistant here. You've got your Git window so you can sync changes. You've got your console. You've actually got your web view, which is not running right now. You've got a bunch of these other, you've got documentation. You saw earlier I put you've got SSH. All of these windows you can add to your workspace to help you get the most of the app. And of course, you can click on the app, you can click on the files and actually edit these just as though you would. And then the changes would appear in the GitHub window there. So again, this is a far more advanced version and is going to help you on your journey a lot further. Personally, I do think the AI is better. So if you're one of those people that can just ignore or just see through the complex interface, then personally, I would start with Replit, honestly, because you get over the UI and you're just straight up, you're building applications and you know there's not really much of a limit like I feel like there would be with Lovable. But no shade thrown on you if you prefer the look of and want to use Lovable. Again, you can deploy, but you've also got, actually, if we go to the deploy window, you've got different types. You've got a static website, timer-based job scheduler. I've not seen that one before. Auto-scaling. You've got all these different types of hosting and storage built into this application. These do come at a cost. It is more costly. I guess I'll flash the cost of these tools as I go through them, but I think you get more out of this tool. One that I used very early on that it was kind of like the OG vibe coding application that might have come a lot further in its journey since the first time I used it. I was not that impressed, is V0 by Vercel. And it's the same deal. You describe your application, it builds it, and you can launch it in Vercel. I might have to do another video on this. I might have to dig a little bit deeper. But this for me was the OG, which when I used it, it just very mediocre results. Although what's really important is that your prompt is good. And one suggestion I would make is that use Claude to generate you a thorough prompt. So describe your application like a dumb person, have it elaborate, and then use the prompt that it generates. It's a really strong recommendation of mine because then you'll get the most out of the application. So let's talk about the, I would say, more advanced versions of these tools. These start to really abstract a lot of the hosting, a lot of the services, a lot of the debugging is really reliant on you, and that is Cursor and Windsurf. I again started using Cursor with their new agent mode, which is basically the exact same thing you see in Replit, where you just prompt your way through the building of the application. As you can start to use the edit and ask variants of this window here, which again is more specific to files or little features or things like that. It's less broad across the landscape of the application. But this event essentially is your vibe coded thing, and of course the focus here, I can use all of my extensions. I can use everything that I'm familiar with when I'm coding, with the added benefit of having this agent working for me. It's branched off of VS Code, which similarly, Windsurf is also branched off VS Code. So they're very, very familiar. I can restart that. Very familiar experience if you're used to VS Code, but it has its own what they call cascade, which when it opens, we'll see it now, which personally, again, I was majorly put off by bringing an application into Windsurf, and one of the first prompts I gave it, it just changed the UI completely. I didn't ask it to change the UI at all. So again, once you broaden the application, once you start needing to be a bit more specific, or you know exactly what you want, you're really going to want to hone in, which Windsurf and Cursor are great for. My first experience with Windsurf was not a great one, so I think that's left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. It is good. There's just, my gut is telling me that Cursor is just the one to do it. They are also, again, if you don't need the hosting, you can sort out your hosting through GitHub, through Vercel, and various things like that. They are the cheaper version to get the exact same agents or AI as Replit and Lovable. You've got Sonnet, you've got ChatGPT. I think you can, okay, have a little look here. You've got DeepSeek even, you know. They all use the same AI. So it's a cheaper way to do it. The one thing I will say, and I'll link this below, is oftentimes, I don't think I've got it set up in Windsurf. You've got some global rules here, right? And this is where with every request goes a set of rules. And okay, I think we're back up here again. The global rules are going to be very, very specific to you and what you want. I'll leave a link down below of a general rule set that I think would be very helpful to you. But certainly things that I include in my global rules are strictly using the tools that I'm familiar with. So when given an opportunity, use Superbase. For hosting, we use Vercel. For most applications, use Next.js and things like that. This is the level of control that I have not seen inside of Replit, inside of Lovable, and this is the sort of advanced usage or user behavior that you need when you use things like Cursor and Windsurf. So I strongly recommend using the global or workspace rules depending on the project. It's probably worth talking about design overall using these tools, because right now there's so much going on in the world of Gemini 2.5, which has been released, where they're able to take designs, a JPEG, you know, built in Figma, and recreate those as React components. This is an interesting direction, and I feel like design in general deserves its own dedicated video. But in a nutshell, these tools really do depend on things like ShadCN, Tailwind, and Radix as well to build out basic UIs that, for lack of a better word, are glorified wireframes. They lack a lot of personality, they lack a lot of individualism, which is why I think we need to consider these as a prototype generation type of thing, where you then build in or get a developer or something like that to develop the UI of the application to make it more unique. But 9 times out of 10, the product itself is hopefully filling such a void in the market that the design really comes secondary to the service that it's, or the value that it's providing. That all being said, just don't expect to have pixel perfect prototypes and to be able to make adjustments like you would expect in something like Webflow. So there's a bit of an expectation thing, but also, again, I think you can build good UIs, but that deserves its own video in and of itself. Right, Sam from the future here. I wanted to show you some of the latest updates with Replit, because I know previously I said the design was a bit lackluster and there's a bit more work that needs to be done. But since then, I have been building a new app, a new AI chat app that is better than the rest of them that's out there and far cheaper. So when it's out, I'll let you know about it. Where the Replit has done an amazing job with the UI of the app. Now, this isn't going to be the final UI of the app, and if anything, let's open it in a new window so you can see it in all its glory. I haven't touched the UI at all on this app. But what was interesting that I didn't experience previously is that it kind of built out the UI and the shell of the app with nothing working. Like I couldn't even create new chats, and there was dummy data and things like that. And it sort of like built out the shell of the UI, and then I was prompting the actual services that went into it. I'm not quite sure what to think about that, because I wouldn't know what you would do if you didn't know that, okay, you needed to create AI routes for the chat app, or whether you needed to store things in a database. I had to use my developer knowledge to sort of fill out the shell of this application. So I really do not know what to make of it, but it all works. Tell me a joke. Well, at least last night it was working, but no worries if it's not. Yeah, it's not working. That's fine. It's only because I was debugging it last night and, obviously didn't clean things up. So, but the point is, you can select all of the different models that you want to use, various things like that. It's strictly invite only login now. Let me know. I'm going to price it pretty competitively because ultimately, instead of paying $20 for ChatGPT and then another $20 for Gemini, you'll pay half that and you'll get all of the models, including DeepSeek and Anthropic, under one subscription. So I want to add the subscription element to it first. Right now it's sort of beta testing and stuff like that, but I'm really excited about this. But most importantly, I really wanted to show you this UI because, again, this UI has not changed one bit, and this was one shot from Replit. So maybe we're in a new kind of realm of at least passable UI, and most importantly, they're there to earn you money and start launching your business. So I'm not really sure what this episode was. It was just a showcase of some of the tools that I'm building, what I'm exploring at the moment. What I want to do more of on this channel is explore this vibe code, this AI, website and SaaS application development stuff, because this is far more interesting to me, far more relevant to my company, the stuff that we do. And I think there's a real hunger to learn more about AI coding, and hopefully I can bring my years of experience, which I think really adds a layer that you won't get anywhere, to the vibe coding discussion that's going on. So we'll end it there. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'm going to have to think of a new outro because we're not going to be, well, we're still no coding, I guess. Yeah, maybe it's no coding. Happy no coding.